It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, we are back with the Real Estate Breakfast Property Podcast, covering the Australian property market as we do, and streaming right now on Spotify and iHeartRadio. We break down all of the major real estate markets from Perth to the Sunshine Coast, and good morning if you are lucky enough to be there, as well as all of the hot regional areas throughout the country. Now, if you'd like to get in touch, you've got two options to do that. The first, you can leave us a recorded message. Super easy. The link is below. Just push on the link and start talking to share with us either your frustrations or your success stories. We'd love to hear either one. And the second way is to email us, myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. And if you were looking at property over the weekend, how is that comparing to late last year? What are you noticing in that space? Let us know, because we are back after the weekend. It is a Monday, February the 16th. Now, the Sydney's luxury real estate market remains one of the most compelling and expensive in the world, consistently ranking among the top global cities for luxury property value and sales. According to Knight Frank's Wealth Report, the amount of high-end space in Sydney, it has shrunk over the past decade, underscoring rising premiums. And, you know, it's like anything, isn't it? If there is less of it, more people want the unobtainable if they can afford to splash the cash in this market of Sydney. Now, if you compare Sydney to Brisbane and the Gold Coast and Melbourne, Sydney offers less space per dollar but remains a magnet for local and international high net worth buyers. And that is where we're going to take you right now, to somebody who operates in the luxury market, as we take you to Sydney and to Monika Tu from Black Diamondz Property Concierge. And good morning to you, Monika. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast for the first time this year. I know that over the Christmas New Year, you probably would have loved to have had a break. Did you get to put the tools down and have some fun?
Absolutely. I took actually a month and a half. So my fun is, combined with leisure and always business. So I've been traveling to UAE, to China, Hong Kong, Singapore, just to meet and greet some of our incredible, clients. And I had a really good time. How about yours?
Well, yeah, not as international as yours. I went to a beachside resort and just sort of hung loose for a couple of weeks and recharged the battery, which is very, very nice. Had the weather on my side. Now, let's dive into the Sydney global luxury market, because, as I mentioned, it is shrinking significantly over the past decade. And when comparing luxury property values across Australia, the difference is quite obvious. If you look at the Sydney market, around 45 square metres for $1.4 million, while, as I said, Brisbane and the Gold Coast offers over double that amount. But it is horses for courses, isn't it? Quite a different scenario, because it's sort of in a market all by itself when you look at Sydney.
In my market, I don't often price a property by square meters. I'm specializing in Upper North Shores, Mossman. We see the uniqueness, or maybe the locations or the facings, waterfront, deep waterfront with a jetty or without jetty. So hardly anything by square meters. I just actually picked my calculator and calculate one of the properties sold recently in eastern suburbs. We're talking about 45,000 to 92,000 per square meters. But, we never do that calculation. It's not because of my math, it's because it just doesn't work in the luxury market. eastern suburbs of Sydney, in Mosman, some incredible records. I don't know if the Sydney is shrinking. So because I'm not the expert in Gold Coast and Brisbane, I heard like the property is just going, incredible in demand, But recently, Greg, it's funny thing is like Gold Coast is actually upcoming. So we've got a couple of properties coming, for my off-market list. Incredible. We're talking about $30 million in Gold Coast. In luxury market, by saying that, I don't think we just sell the property by square meters. And the market from my side is not shrinking at all.
Yeah, the Gold Coast, it has become one of the most affordable luxury markets in the country. Now, anybody who bought in the luxury market on the Gold Coast pre-COVID, I've said this before, it is like literally winning lotto. Big money has been made there in the Gold Coast. I just want to come back to Sydney, though, because you were telling me off air, looking at something like $50 million for your clients, a $50 million property, you're struggling. Nothing on the market to find.
Yes, we did a Google search or domain real estate search for anything over $15 million. There's nothing on the market, but it doesn't mean there's no buyers or sellers. So, in our book at the moment, we have quite a few. I think I work it together about almost $400 million property. So one of them has a $44.5 million to about $150 million. So the vendor doesn't want to go on the market and the buyer doesn't want to buy from the market because they know who is the seller and we know who is the seller and who is the buyer. So hopefully this year, 2026, and we have a big transactions off market.
It's surprising though, isn't it? Because we talk about selling off market. It's not mass market. That's something we say over and over again. But if you're in this upper echelon, privacy is such a big deal for these people. They go into the selling off market for that reason. They just don't want to draw attention.
Absolutely true. The sellers, one of my sellers is like a company is publicly listed and then they don't want to get, all the wrong attention, so to speak. And they know how much they want and they know, they are telling us how to do it. I think off market definitely for my business is the trend.
And we are talking to Monika Tu there in Sydney. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the Asian market and the Asian demographics. You heard Monika talk about the fact that she went into the UAE. We'll find out a little bit more about that after this.
Stay ahead of the competition with the latest news, insights and data analysis on the Property Podcast that keeps you informed.
And good morning to you, Adrian. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. Right, let's have a look at some price guides. And people they've got to get their heads around this. So what sort of advice can you throw up when price guides are being deployed?
Look, it's a good question and obviously a bit of a hot topic at the moment, especially in New South Wales around underquoting. So the objective definition, Craig, of underquoting is when an owner signs a listing authority at, say, $900,000 and the agent provides a price guide of $800,000. So that's deliberate objective underquoting, which would attract a breach from fair trading, okay? However, if an owner signs a listing authority with a price guide of $900,000 and the property sells for 1.1, that's not objectively underquoting. That just means the agent marketed the property extremely well, presented the property well, attracted a lot of competition, and the property just happened to sell for the market value because auction is the formula and probably the most efficient and effective formula for delivering market value. So it doesn't mean the agent necessarily got it wrong. It just means that the market between the day they listed it and the day it sold could have shifted because some of these campaigns can be 4 to 6 weeks. It's important for everyone to realise what the objective definition of underquoting is and the difference between that and a property selling above expectations.
We don't just report on real estate news, we take you to the source of the information. We produce more property podcasts every week than anyone else. We are your trusted guide for all things real estate.
It is a Real Estate Monday. Monika Tu in Sydney talking the luxury property market this morning. And we're going to talk about the Asian demographics because, Monika, this is something that you've noticed is changing.
Yes, for my recent trip, we spent over a month, traveling Asia Pacific. And we are very fortunate to be invited by a lot of our past clients, our past buyers. I think demographic definitely has changed. Before we talk about my buyers from probably about 35 to about 75, 80 years old. But the 75, 80 years clients actually happily settling back in China. Okay, so, they got all the helps and they live very comfortably. So what they're buying is they're buying for their kids. Every single person try to encourage their children. Normally they live in London, in UK, in US, and come back to live in Australia. So what is the reason? Because Australia is very expensive to buy, right? So land tax, stamp duties, FRBs, etc. But they say, what? Money cannot buy safety. Australia is still the luckiest country and the safest country to live. So now we are actually searching the property for the next generation of the Asian buyers.
Yeah, and if you have a look at one of those markets being extremely safe, a lot of Aussies are heading there. We feature Dubai, and that is one market that is, I would suggest, far more safer than Australia. They literally have no crime there. It's a completely different animal, and it's somewhere where you recently went to.
So you're referring to UAE, right?
Yeah.
So surprisingly, it's really safe and the lifestyle is fabulous. We had such a good time to, really understand the people. The people we're talking about, how do you feel living in this region? They say, this is the safest country, no crime. And Abu Dhabi, the medical is for free, education is for free. Because once you're talking to people, they are happy there. That means the country is good. The investment environment is very healthy. And the really interesting things, we notice, because we talk to a lot of developers, we have a lot of developers, friends, and they're saying that the buyers is very much international. Number one buyers is from UK. Can you believe it? And the number two is Russian. And you have Indian, of course, we have Chinese. The market is so international and so healthy. And the regulators is really good. Go through all the procedures. It's extremely safe. What I'm saying is that in Australia, we have a trust account, right? You either with a lawyer or with a real estate agent. But the trust account apparently is with the government. They want to make sure there's nothing wrong. You cannot make mistakes. So that's given investors a lot of opportunity. I think Australia has got competition in terms of investment market.
Yeah, for sure. That is one of the reasons why so many Aussies are heading to the UAE. Monika, great to have a chat to you there in Sydney about the luxury market and also your recent travels into the UAE, into Dubai. Have a great first quarter in Sydney there. Look forward to chatting again soon.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Remember to follow us on any of the podcast platforms so you never miss a real estate podcast. You can follow us on Apple, Spotify and Amazon. Know your property with us.
We get inquiry from families looking to move to Bali to have a sea change. We're definitely seen an increase in inquiry from retirees who think it's much more affordable to live in Bali, especially from Perth and the west coast of Australia.
Yeah, well, we're 50% down on the number of listings that we had a year ago at the moment. That just goes to show you how tight things are. And over the last 4 months, my average selling price above asking has been $72,000.
The median unit price in Kirribilli sits at 1.3 million, and as you mentioned, is down 23% over a 5-year period. Some of these markets do have a higher concentration of investor activity occurring, which can obviously impact supply levels, transactions.
When we're in that period of lower lending rates, it also enables more investors to get in the market. Even if demand then remains strong or is still in the market, it might shift to other areas.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.